also, like me, the cousin's daughter, another cousin's daughter of Silvia Great.
Our guest speakers of the evening to be seated on the dais. Dr. Maria Aurora Couto. Dr. Couto is a writer and an educationist and recipient of the Padma Shri in 2010. Advocate Uday Bendre. Advocate Bendre is a lawyer and a former member of the Goa Legislative Assembly. He is a language activist, poet, author, and editor of the company daily Sunakan. Father Loyola Pereira. Father Loyola Pereira is a writer, a musician, and secretary to the Archbishop of Goa and Daman, Most Reverend Philip Neri Ferran. Mr. Damodar Mauzo. Mr. Mauzo is an award-winning short story writer, novelist, columnist, and screenplay writer, and has been writing in Konkani for over 3 decades. Dr. Savya Vegas. Dr. Viegas is a writer, artist, and art historian. She runs a foundation called Shastri Foundation, which tries to put people at the center of development. Thank you, Father Savio. To begin this evening's reflections on Dr. Jose Pereira, I invite our first speaker, Dr. Maria Aurora Couto, to share a few words. Father Savio, Reverend Fathers, and friends, some of you know how moving it is for me to speak today. It is difficult, it really is very difficult. And especially so after listening to that mando, and I could hear the echo of Jose's voice in my ears. Kuttur saw, the best mandos are from Kutturi. Lotlichi, because my village is from Lotuli. Best mandos are also from Lotuli. These were the conversations over a long life. So it has been an emotional time for me for the last 10 days when Angela, Jose's wife, rang me up to say how seriously ill it was and that the end would soon be there. There are so many dimensions to our Jose's prolific, brilliant, outstanding achievements. And there are speakers today who can speak much more knowledgeably than I about his art, about his seminal work on Konkani language. Then there's Jose, the ethnomusicologist, the scholar of theology and architecture, and much else. So allow me to speak of friendship. And I know that apart from Alban, who is a very long-time friend, he was extremely fond of Uday, because every time he rang us, the first thing he used to ask me is Uday in town? I have to meet him. The fact that there has been a belated recognition of Dr. Jose Pereira in Goa points, belated because it started only about about 8 years ago. It points to a certain indifference in our society to scholarship. Rabindranath Kelekar once told me that Dharmanand Kosambi was ignored in Goa, and many called him Pampara, which is a braggart. We call ourselves an enlightened and modern society, and yet gifted intellectuals or scholarly work is largely ignored. I recall his excited voice some years ago. We spoke often, he from New York, I from Aldona. He was so excited when Vivek Menezes, Jose Lorenz and Frederick Noronha were in touch with him. I cannot believe it, Aurora, he says, can you imagine some young Goans are actually interested in my work? Is it really happening? It was, I think, that connection and the connection with Pereira Center, I think, has made a lot of difference to Jose's last year. The indifference to scholarship and the need to start a revival and redefinition of Goan culture in its broadest and deepest sense was a dream of 4 young men as students in Bombay in the late 40s and early 50s. The foursome were Eusebio Rodrigues, the younger brother of Lucio Rodrigues, Mario Miranda, Jose Pereira, and Alban Tuto. They had pledged to write, to conceptualize, to theorize, to draw, and to paint in order to revitalize the life of the vine among Goans and to perhaps create space for Goa within the imaginary of the nation. And those who have always lived in Goa should not be upset about what I'm saying today, because it's quite extraordinary, with Jose's death, all kinds of, old friends have been in touch, and one of them was Jean Vegaputin, who is now 94. And we spoke, I had to end the call because I had to leave, but we spoke for almost 25 minutes on Skype. And I said, Jean, please tell me, am I being unfair? But do you think that something happened to Goa after the censorship, after Salazar, and that creativity, that zest, that intellectual energy that was there in the early years, in the late 19th century, early 20th century, died and has not come back. And
was there among Goans in Bombay. And so it's interesting that these 4 guys who were in their 20s said, we have to do something about Goa, we have to revitalize, we have to connect, and we have to connect Goa with India. That was the project. That was the most important project, to connect Goa with India. Alban, of course, in deference to his mother's wish, joined the IAS. This infuriated Jose. He thought it was a betrayal of the cause, and he did not talk to him for many, many years after that. He broke off contact. Eusebio continued to teach English literature in Bombay and then moved off to Washington. Mario began his career as a cartoonist and did what he was supposed to do, which is he put Goa on the map. His corpus gives us a social history of the village of his time. Fast forward 10 years to 1963 when Alban came to Goa after liberation, and Jose just walked in as though nothing had happened for 10 years, rang the doorbell, and the conversation started all over again. You know, sometimes I wish I could write a number of stories about these last 60 years in our lives. So later he came to stay with us in Delhi when he was working briefly with the National Museum and then in Benares. After a short stint, he went off to New York. Over the years, we met in Delhi, we met in London, we met in New York, where once memorably, sitting on the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral, conversation veered from dazzling display of ideas, humor, volatility, and passion to end on the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral with the singing of the Mango. I have tried to understand how and why the friendship between Alban and Jose survived for 60 years. He broke off relations with Mario over a mural to be painted in the Lotani house, and they never made up. The two, in the last 20 years, in between there was no communication with Eusebio, and in the last 20 years he communicated occasionally with Eusebio through me, emails to me, tell Eusebio this, or Eusebio to me, tell Jose this. Although we lived continents apart, and Alban was professionally, though not personally, distant from the world of art and letters, their circle, to me, seems complete, because Alban reviewed Eusebio's novel Samskara, and apart from working hard to help Jose complete the project in Borda, as Father Loyola Pereira knows, Alban also spoke at the inauguration of the frescoes in Faturda. Both of them regretted the conservatism of some elements of our church and also the conservatism of some members of our congregation. My thoughts of Jose and his fine mind are inextricably linked with the memory of Alban, and so I would like to first read what some of you have already heard, what Jose wrote when Alban passed in June 2009, and typically it is scholarly and emotional. I quote, "I cannot begin to say anything meaningful in a couple of paragraphs about my intellectual bond with my friend of 61 years, Alban, a bond voiced and strengthened by our day-long heated conversations on every topic under the sun. A lyric of the Greek poet Callimachus on the death of a friend, Heraclitus by name, from the city of Halicarnassus in Asia Minor, expresses my thoughts beautifully. Someone mentioned your death, Heraclitus. It brought me to tears, and I remembered how often you and I had talked to the sun to set. But my dear friend from Halicarnassus, you have long become ashes. Still your nightingales live on. These death who snatches everything cannot stay." And then he talks about Alban's nightingales, scholarly interests, a passion for music, absorption into logic and expressive writing. Now the reason why I've read this out to you is because these qualities express Jose's personality as well. A feeling heart, a mind that connects all experience and filters it through erudition to express man's capacity for transcendence, as you have seen in the art that was displayed here and also in his frescoes. I recall with nostalgic pleasure our conversations in Delhi in the 60s, his wicked sense of humor and utter disregard of all things material in his pursuit of the life of the mind. He was engaged to be married, and we discussed the economics of running a home. I spoke up against his Spartan approach to life. I don't need Lux soap, he told me, I only use sunlight. I don't need butter, I don't need jam, I can dip bread in my tea. I was infuriated. His monastic choices, I couldn't bear them because he was getting married in 6 months. And in great agitation, I advised him not to get married. I dare not reveal to you the violence of our disagreements. My daughter was then 6 months old, and he would bend over the cradle to sing folk songs in Greek or recite poems in Persian until she screamed. All of us in the family have been amused and enriched by his friendship. I mean, now the staff in Aldona, all of them are upset because they really knew him very well, because he used to come to Goa after we moved and stay with us. And if you come to my house and you see the library, as you enter, on the door I have a poster which was done here, I think, for the exhibition here. It's a wonderful portrait of Jose done by himself. All of us in the family, actually, I rang all my sisters, my husband's sisters. They have tremendous memories of Jose and Alban as students chasing each other around the dining table and around the house in argument. So I have to tell all of them that he's gone. I recall debates at home with Alban when quotations from St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine, the Upanishads and the philosophy of Shankara, Greek tragedy and Shakespeare